Bertram Mitford was a British-born novelist and Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. Born in 1855 in Bath, the third son of Edward Ledwith Osbaldeston Mitford. He was educated at Hurstpierpoint College, Sussex, and after 1873 travelled to South Africa, where he would spend most of his adult life. He eventually married Zima Helen Gentle in Brighton in 1886 and wrote over 40 adventure novels, dying in Cofold, Sussex in 1914. As you can see, there isn't much information on Mitford proper. The one interesting bit of trivia is that his father, Edward Ledwith Osbaldeston Mitford, lived to be 100 years old, for which he received a congratulation by the King, and according to the Times from London, served for 25 years in the Ceylon Civil Service. The Sign of the Spider is a book which I've looked forward to for many years, based on the title alone, before I found out Mitford was compared even to H. Rider Haggard. The problem is the tone of the book is all over the place. On the one hand, you have a main character, Lawrence Stanningham, who is very pessimistic in all he does, to a lovable degree. But on the other hand, you have him participate in human slave trade in Africa, and he goes through all sorts of mental gymnastics to justify how it's actually good that he's enslaving these people. Mitford has all the people he enslaves be quote-unquote savages, bloodthirsty cannibals, and so he tries very, very hard to not have the issue seem at all morally dubious. That is still very hard to accomplish, mind you, especially when the main character actually compares his own perpetual and hereditary enslavement of whole generations of people to his own future of, gasp, having to do odd jobs for not that much money, because willing paid employment and forced unpaid lifelong servitude and objectification are basically the same thing. Now, at the beginning of the novel, when the main character sets out to South Africa to try and make his fortune, he doesn't go explicitly to take part in the slave trade, but circumstances do force him into it. Only later on in the book, when he gets captured by the people of the Spider, descended from Zulus and living in an enclosed secret valley, the reader is hard-pressed to feel genuine sympathy for him, because he always has to remember this man was making money off of enslaving people. One of his companions, who had taken part in the whole slave trade, actually protests the bloody business at some point, and in hindsight it honestly feels like it was the main character who should have had this kind of outlook from the beginning. Especially since the novel is set up like a traditional adventure novel, where the story is designed to have you sympathize with the main character and his plight, and hope he overcomes whatever difficulties come his way, and that sort of thing you have to keep remembering about why he's in this place to begin with, kinda comes up as a sore spot. The title of the book is derived from a box given to the main character by his potential love interest before he sets off for his expedition, and just so happens to resemble the national symbol of the spider-worshipping Bakatia people, and thus manages to save his skin when they eventually find it among his belongings after they take him prisoner. However, we really don't get to see much of their land when they do take him prisoner. We mostly have him interrogated in the royal palace and then thrown into the dungeons. And it is here, finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. He gets himself thrown down to a pit with a huge man-eating spider, and it's not that great. And this scene only takes a couple of pages before he is rescued by his Bagatia sweetheart Lindella, with whose help he eventually manages to escape out of the Bagatia lands and then get back to civilization. However, along the way to Cape Town, Lindella is bitten by a snake and dies, presumably so Mitford wouldn't have to deal with any racial issues if she ever got to Cape Town. After making his way back, Lawrence actually discovers that his former sweetheart from Cape Town had already married her incredibly moody and emotional cousin solely to prevent him from committing suicide if he didn't get his way. Dejected, Lawrence then goes back to England with a couple of diamonds he found in the spider cave, and apparently his slaving companions are still in the business and getting rich off of it by the end of the novel. While the Bagatia in hindsight are portrayed with dignity, one does have to wonder about Mitford's morality when dealing with some of these issues, especially given how the book ends. Overall, the horror element in this book is far too minimal to really warrant it being a classic in the genre, and the adventure element isn't as extensive as one would hope. I really do hope Mitford's Induna's Wife, and especially The Weird of Deadly Horror, will be far better.